In today's Threading Thoughts, we discuss the FMCG industry and how the pandemic has thrown it multiple challenges. Fast-moving consumer goods (FMCG) sector is India's fourth largest sector, with household and personal care accounting for 50% of FMCG sales in India. Growing awareness, changing lifestyles, and a much easier access have been the key growth drivers for this sector. Big data explosion has enhanced the ability to acquire, store, and process data. However, the pandemic has introduced challenges in supply chain, distribution, and storage. Technological solutions might be the key to solving sourcing and logistics hiccups and address the imbalance in supply and demand, especially in the dairy industry. Rakesh was born in a small town nestled in the Himalayas in Himachal Pradesh. He is an FMCG industry expert, having over 3 decades of rich hands-on experience in leadership roles with exposure to Asian, Middle East, African, and European markets. He has worked with many brands including GlaxoSmithKline, Nestle, Amul, Kuwait Dairy Company, Unikai Foods Dubai, Open Country Dairy New Zealand, Parley Agro, among others. Furthermore, Rakesh has consulted various projects in India and overseas and has also served as an advisor mentor for new startups. He has spearheaded and developed multinational teams, launched new products and packaging, and transformed loss-making businesses into profit-making ones. In addition, Rakesh has chaired technical sessions and instituted new thinking through talks at events such as TEDx conferences, Economic Times summits, academic university events, panel discussions, and other FMCG conferences internationally. So glad to welcome Mr. Rakesh Kumar for the Threading Thoughts podcast for today. Thank you so much, Rakesh, for joining us. It's so sweet of you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, so thanks, Ms. Mridula, for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here today. We can start, I think, now.
Sure, absolutely. So the one question that I think a lot of people sort of have in the back of their minds is, should marketers focus on being consumer-centric alone? Because how important then is increasing product shelf lives, the supply chains? There's a lot of these back-end processes that we might not be aware of. So is it only consumer and customer friendly? Is there something behind that we are missing?
Yes, of course. I mean, consumer-centric is a very much important part, and particularly during this pandemic, we were not able to connect with the consumers face to face. So we were trying to connect with the digital platforms and all. But at the same time, what I feel is, I mean, we need to be innovative and creative also. For example, when the pandemic starts, people were scared, and people were looking for the products with the health based to improve the immunity. So means there are new offerings were expected by the consumers from the industry. If I say consumer centric, for example, Amazon is doing a very good part on the consumer centric part, starting from ordering the things to getting the orders in case of any quality issues, returning the product, getting your payment back and all. So it's a very, very good exposure they are giving to the consumer. So they are very, very consumer centric. However, for example, Coke and Pepsi, they're also very consumer centric. But during this pandemic, people are scared to use the more sugary products, or if they are not healthy.
Yeah.
So people will look for the healthy products. So definitely, the marketers need to focus on the more offerings based on the requirement of the consumers.
Absolutely. And what about, thinking about these supply chains or shelf lives? All of these are packaged products, right? So what is it that you think has to be put in more thought for those? Is that something that's very important, especially in times of lockdowns where, products stay on the shelves longer only because people are not walking into stores? So is that something of a concern that should be addressed as well?
Yes, definitely. First of all, supply chain and the shelf life both are important, and both go hand in hand. For example, we were buying apple only during the season earlier. I mean, if you go back couple of years back. The apples were available only during the season only. But with the improvement in the supply chain, having the cold storage and better supply chains, the product is available throughout the year now.
Right.
It's just one example. Similarly, for example, why it is important is to have the more shelf life product and better supply chains is because globally there is a wastage of around 1.6 billion tons of food every year, and which is costing around $750 billion loss to the society. And and at the same time, population is increasing. As per the UN data, we are going to reach 9.7 billion population by 2050. Means 70% more food is required to be produced. So we need to control the wastage. At the same time, we need to produce more food without impacting the natural resources, because that is creating another issue of global warming and all.
Correct.
So that's why improving the shelf life and improving the supply chains will help us in improving the gap on this. So, for example, I'll just give you one example of milk. I'm from the dairy industry, so milk is always a very good product. It's a complete food. Earlier, we have only the fresh milk, which is just 2 days shelf life. If you don't consume in the second day, it is going to be spoiled. But now the products available with 6 months shelf life, UST long life milk, which you can store at a normal temperature. No refrigeration is required. Any chai wala and all these people, they prefer these products because they don't have the storage capacity or the refrigeration system. So these products are available, and that's why we are able to save the milk for a longer period. So in my view, supply chain and shelf life both play important role.
Exactly. And actually, as you correctly mentioned, I'm more around these Black Swan events, right? So this particular pandemic, perhaps this year, very interesting new trends of marketing evolved. Were some of these evident in the dairy industry as well?
Yes, definitely. Always these Black Swan events, they happen sometimes, and always there are new innovations or new trends always comes from these events. For example, there was a 2008, there was a recession. So a lot of new raw materials, lot of new products where we can reduce the cost or we can improve, give the same quality and give the similar products to the consumers by reducing the cost and by maintaining the quality. Similarly, here in the pandemic, the marketing focus on the immunity or health-based products. So a lot of new learnings, new products, digital platforms comes, e-commerce got a presence, although it was already available, but it was available in the dairy sector also. For example, we launched e-commerce services at Amul, but other small players also, they started using the e-commerce services because it was very difficult to reach the customers. Moreover, the supply chain, the modern trade was very much impacted during this pandemic. Hotels and catering services, they were closed. So the product has to be delivered to the households of the people. So there was a marketing shift from the modern trade to the consumers straight away at their homes. So there were changes in the supply chains, there were changes in the marketing strategies, there were changes in the e-commerce and users of e-commerce to give facility to the customers so that they can order online, they can pay online. So these were the benefits. And secondly, the buffers. Earlier, we were working on the inventories. We don't want more inventory. We don't want the buffer capacity. Right. But now with this pandemic, the industry who were having some stocks, they were able to deliver the products immediately during the lockdowns because people were not available. There were some spare parts issues, some packaging materials were not available. So the companies who were having some of the products in the stock, they were able to supply the market immediately. So those thoughts, earlier age-old thoughts, have become important now. So these are always the learnings from these Black Swan events.
Very interesting because as you correctly said, you might try to reduce your stock or your storage capacity. You would just want it to, be a smooth transition from production to delivery. But given these kind of impactful events, you will need some backup. And for a lot of people who might not have access to it, if you're able to deliver it, that's all that matters to the customer at the end, that they got the product without any hassles. And I'm sure a lot of them were also concerned about the packaging as far as, especially for COVID virus transmission, sanitation, and those were additional hurdles that, this industry had to face per se. So, how did a traditional sector, perhaps, or a conventional FMCG sector embracing technology, not particularly to the pandemic, but generally as well?
Yeah, I mean, the fact is that to be competitive, you have to adapt some of the technology. Nowadays, this is the trend. And if you see all over the places, not only the dairy industry or the food industry, even education or any small things, everybody is trying to adopt the technology.
Correct.
In the traditional sector, for example, the Kirana stores now, even they also started monitoring their inventories. They also started their e-billing. Even the sabji wala and the doodh wala also, they started their Paytm services.
Right.
So you can pay through the Paytm. So our technology adaptation is going to happen definitely, and it is increasing on day-to-day basis. And secondly, the companies, small companies or the small vendors who cannot afford, there are services available. They can take the leverage of the companies. For example, Amazon is supporting the sellers, so they can give the analytics to the sellers, and they can, based on the analytics, based on their inventories levels, based on the consumers' buying behaviors, they can keep the inventory, they can add on the new products, and they can serve the customers very well. So definitely, it's increasing day by day. And you must have seen that even the use of artificial intelligence and blockchain, it is coming in the food industry, because to help the tracking of for example, the supply chain vehicles,
right,
the deliveries. Yeah. So blockchain is being used in that scenario, even the efficiency improvements, even the gap analysis. So those are the things which are being done. And more traditional, I would say, in our industries, the farmers, for example. For the farmers, it's very difficult to track the health of their cattle when they are ready for the pregnancy. Is there any problem in getting the milk from the cattle? So even there are many platforms are coming. For example, I'm recently connected with a BrainWide company. It's a Kerala-based company. They are into a service. It's all artificial intelligence based, sensors based. So just with one tag on the cattle, you can track all the information about the health of the cattle. What is the feeding scenario? What is the pregnancy? When it is going to come in the heat? So all those things, the farmer can get it on the his mobile phone. And there's a veterinary service. So there's a 24/7 veterinary service also available for the farmer, which will help them to take the actions immediately and reduce the cost. So, even the more traditional, which is, we feel that it is in the villages and it is the farmers. So that is also going to happen now.
And it's fascinating how much these technologies have actually made inroads, right, into everything that we do. It's not just, packaging and supply chains. Blockchain has become, I think, quite ubiquitous in supply chain management. And it's quite used quite well. Transportation chips, embedded in different transport vehicles perhaps can track, or even the cartons themselves can track how fresh they are, or
yes,
how old they are, or is there an issue with the discoloration. They're absolutely amazing. And I think, as you correctly said, this is something amazing for the dairy industry as well, to monitor the health of a cow, or the cattle, just so that you get the best produce, and that way the customer is also comfortable with that the quality has been maintained throughout. But these are all amazing. But it would really be useful if you could sort of, elaborate on the reaction of the food and beverage industry, particularly during COVID. And now that we have a new normal post-COVID, I mean, things are not going to get back to what they were before. Things have moved on and things have changed. So some of the lessons that you might have learned from the pandemic as well.
Yeah, so initially when the pandemic comes and there were lockdowns and there were curfew in certain areas, so initially there were a lot of issues on the manpower. People were scared to come to the factories. Even the supply chains were impacted because government, they highlight some of the restrictions, but they were not clear, and later on they allow the essential services. However, we faced a lot of issues. For example, when the truck is coming with the milk, they allow. But when it is coming empty after getting the milk in the factory, so they were not allowing because there were miscommunications, or you can say the lack of information at the ground level. So it took us initially some time to adjust to that, the environment, and to take the government help. And everybody has supported. The best thing was everybody was very supportive during this period. And so we were able to do that. Also, for example, the hygiene standards, they improved a lot. Everybody started washing the hands.
Right.
In my 30 years of career in the food industry or dairy industry, we were always asking the people to wash their hands before entering into the factories. But nobody, whenever there is a camera or somebody is watching, they always use to wash the hands. But otherwise, they were just avoiding it. But now with this pandemic, it was a good learning, and everybody has started using it, and it has benefited us also. So in controlling the contamination or cross contamination. So these are some of the things. And secondly, the supply chain teams, because most of the sales or marketing teams, they were working from home. Only the factory people or the supply chain people, they were on the front. And so they also got the importance. This time, earlier, only the sales and marketing people, they feel very important in the industry because the marketing, they bring the orders, sales, they supply the products. So others, they are driving the factories or they are driving the business. But this time, supply chain teams, they did a good job, excellent job, staying together, working together, ensure the products with right quality, right quantity, reach the customers in the right time. So that was a learning. And also, I would say, while working for the health-based products or the immunity-based products, because that was the need of the consumers. So at that speed, earlier it used to take 6 months to 1 year to launch a product, but this time it was very fast because all the stakeholders, they worked together and everybody was involved in that. So we were able to launch the products in a very short time. And this helps the organizations to supply the immunity-based products to consumers at a very less time. So that helps a lot.
And going forward, if there is such a, perhaps not COVID, but any other shutdown or, lack of transportation, how has the industry understood that and worked around it?
Yeah, see, every 100 years is always some pandemic comes and we face issues. We took the challenges. We make the things ready for that to handle that. But later on, we forget. But this pandemic, I think it will be considered as a memorable event of the future also, in the future also, because there's so many learnings from this pandemic, and there are so many changes going to happen in the supply chains, in the factories. For example, in the smart factories, now we are thinking of building a smart factories, having social distancing or new skills, or people they need to wash their hands at the entry, or there are so many things we need to adapt while addressing the new factories or new supply chains. So a lot of learnings from this pandemic definitely will support in the future also.
Unbelievable, and I hope so too, because it has affected the livelihood of so many, not only farmers but also dairy farms and others as well. And the sustenance for a lot of people depends on that. So that's
Definitely.
absolutely amazing to see. But thank you so much for spending time with us, going into detail on so many of these new efforts that has been happening and some of the new initiatives that have been happening as well. So I'm really glad that you were able to take this time off and share your expertise. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here.